Well, it's not very often that I get to stand up here and know that at some point today, I'm going to upset every one of you. But today's one of those days that my message is going to hit, hopefully, everybody somewhere. And we have to all think about things, and so it's one of those good days for me when I'm like, yeah, I look forward to this. But all right, so let's think about this. Most of us in here, it really wasn't that long ago that we could have a disagreement with somebody and still walk beside them as a friend. It just really wasn't that long ago. But now, we have people who say things like, well, if you don't agree with me, then just unfriend me. If you don't like the way I think, then don't listen to what I say. It's a cancel culture that we live in right now. And see, so we discuss our rights, but we rarely talk about our responsibilities. I didn't hear it, but I know I can't even tell you how many times I've heard it said and played that a certain president stood before his country and said, do not ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And it's still, again, it wasn't that long ago that we could rally around and do things together. 9/11 was 20 years ago. And after that major event took place, the entire country rallied together. We sent billions, not millions, but billions of dollars to New York. We sent people to go serve. We sent organizations in to help. Churches went. And thousands upon thousands of young men and women joined the military because of that one event. Even today, like in a snowstorm, when crisis and tragedy happens, if we allow it to, we can still be neighbors. We can still get along. We can still help each other out. And the church, the global church, one of the beauties of the church has always been how she rises up in a moment of crisis. How we come together and we take care and we serve and we love one another. And this body right here, this church, is tremendous at that. We take care of people when they're in need. And when we have those moments of crisis, what they do is they provide us with an opportunity to take our eyes off of ourselves and focus on the needs of somebody else. We consider one another. As Dave mentioned, we had our retreat yesterday, and we spent the first part of the morning looking backwards. And it's kind of interesting to sit with a group of people and look at 2020 and say, you know what? Ultimately, it was a good year. It was really a good year. This church, it was a good year. We had to make a lot of quick moves. We had to do some things, and we've done things very different. But ultimately, it was a good year. And so in a moment of crisis, we were able to go forward, to continue on the mission. And so as disciples of Jesus Christ, we should lead the push when it comes to serving others, loving others, honoring others, considering others. We should be the ones who leads this because Jesus did that for us. But oftentimes, don't we find that the church can be just, if not more divided than the culture? And then when those moments happen, we're not setting the right example. But I want to give you a moment to just understand this. It's always been like this. As someone who's in seminary, I will tell you, when you study church history, the history of the Christian church is about, unfortunately, more about division than unity. Romans 14, where we're coming from today, is about an issue or a couple issues between Christians. Paul wrote this letter to Christians. He didn't write it to the people who live in Rome, who are part of the culture. He didn't write it to Roman citizens. He wrote it to citizens of God's kingdom. He wrote it to believers. And there was something going on. And so we have to remember the context of Romans and the big picture. The big picture was 5 years prior to this letter, the emperor had shipped all Jews out of Rome. He was tired of them. And so he sent all the Jews away. They had to leave on penalty of death. Well, that included a bunch of Christians who used to be Jews, but now they were now Christians. And so they had to go too. And it left a bunch of Gentiles, people who had no connection to being a Jew or Israel or the Old Testament. They had no connections to that whatsoever. They were Gentiles. Most of us in here, we'd all been Gentiles. Well, anyway, they were now the only Christians in Rome. And it stayed like that for 5 years. They had no traditions. They had no connection to the Old Testament and the law. Well, then the Jews were allowed to come back into Rome. And so the Christians, the Jewish Christians, they came back into Rome and they're like, y'all changed the church. We want it the way it used to be. Conflict. Sound familiar? How many times have we said, I can't wait for COVID to be done so we can go back to doing church like we used to? I can't wait for this pandemic to be over so we can go back to normal. That ship sailed. Our culture is permanently changed. The church, even this church, is permanently changed. It's not going to ever really be the same. February of 2020 and February of 2022, they're not going to look the same. It's not going to happen. And so we have to figure out how to do this so that we're all okay with it. You know, the church is a living, breathing organism. It is not a structured, rigid organization. And so as a church, we must transition well. We have to move forward without forgetting the past. We are literally, we are standing on the shoulders of those who came before us as we reach new heights. And if we think about that as parents, don't we want our children, they're the next version of us, don't we want them to be a better version? How many parents are so selfish to say, well, I've done this and I hope my kids fail because I don't want them better than I am? I hope that's not a conversation that you have in your family. So as a church, we have to think the next version, the next improvement, should be better, different, because the culture around us is different. But we have to do this pushing forward with love and unity being our North Star. That is, we still have to go that direction. We have to include everybody. And so let's pick up with Romans 14, verse 1. We're just going to take one verse this time. Except the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters. So, the first thing that we need to learn, Paul is saying, is that there are disputable matters. What are those? Those are secondary issues. They're not biblical issues. They're not, there are matters of opinion and matters of interpretation. These are areas in church, in our lives, that are not mandated clearly as commands or prohibited as stuff we can't do. And for this, Romans, for what Paul is talking to, he's talking to believers in Jesus Christ. He's talking to disciples who are seeking to do the best that they know how. So this is not a matter, it's a matter of faith, not a matter of moral failure or a quality of person. He's not saying, well, you need to, we don't dispute over, just because that guy over there is drinking too much, it's okay. No, that's not what he's saying. That's a character issue. It's a moral issue. What he's talking about are things like, do we go to church virtually or do we come in person? Do we wear a mask or do we not wear masks? See, these are secondary issues. They're not biblical issues. Do we take the vaccine or do we not take the vaccine? These are disputable matters in our culture, in our in our church. Communion. We have communion every week. Kat and I, we were raised in the Christian church. But we went to the same church for over 20 years. We would have an elder come down. They would do communion. It would go up and you would take, the plate would pass and you get your communion cup and it was all in one thing. You got your bread and your cup and you passed it along. And then we had this long period of time where you prayed and then you took your communion and you put your cup in the little thing behind the pew that had a little holder for it. You put your cup in. That's how we did communion. Well, then we left Greencastle Christian Church and we moved to Lincoln and we went to a different Christian church. Same movement, same theology and doctrine. They did communion differently. We went to Ames, Oklahoma. They did communion differently. We come here, and you pass the cup, the plate, and you get your bread and you eat it, and you pass the cup and you put it and you put the cup back. That's how it used to be. And I've joked that it's like doing shots. You got to hurry up and get it moving. Can't pass it along. Nothing wrong with it. But for some people, that's how you do communion. No, it's how we have done communion. And you know why, I'm assuming, I haven't asked, you know why we do it that way? Because we don't have the little things on the back of the pew to put the cups in, so you got to put it back in the tray. Otherwise, we just leave it on the thing. And now we're doing communion entirely different. We don't pass anything, and we have to eat that styrofoam stuff. And juice that I don't know how old it is. Although I think it's pretty fresh because it's back ordered. So it doesn't matter. What does matter is remembering to take communion. And I'm actually speaking to the people at home right now. When we do communion, are you actually taking communion? Are you actually remembering what Jesus did for you? Because that's the other thing that we learned from 2020. When we were not in this building for 16 weeks and we were doing church at home, you get to do communion with what you got. And so there are disputable matters. And again, it's gone on throughout the history of the church. Music styles. Can someone be a Christian and have tattoos and body piercings? Do you baptize by sprinkling or immersion? Can you dance or are you not allowed to dance? Are we outward focused or inward focused? Are we member driven or mission driven? See, these are all disputable matters. And what happens is now in our culture, we have quit talking about them. And instead, we just argue about them. And we cancel other people who disagree with us. I was just getting ready to ask for a video. All right, we're going to move on and we'll come back to the video. All right. So, remember this, we're coming back. Verses 14, 2 through 6. One person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another, whose faith is weak, eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not. And the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Who are you to judge someone else's servants? To their own master, servants stand or fall, and they will stand, for the Lord is able to make them stand. One person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God, and whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. So, the next thing that we're going to just kind of look at is diets and days. Paul doesn't clearly spell out what the controversies were. Yes, he talks about a couple things here, but without much detail. It would be because he's written a letter to the Romans. The Romans know the issue. It would be like if I sent you an email or a letter that said, we're living in troubling times, but we're going to persevere. And someone was to read that 10 years from now, they would have no idea what troubling times I'm talking about. But you would know that we're living in troubling times because we're living in the midst of a pandemic and we're having national unrest. There's political issues. You would know what our troubling times were. We're living through them. So Paul doesn't spell it out, but he does bring up the idea of diets and days. He wasn't saying anything about, hey, Pastor Tom, you have two family members who are vegans. It doesn't care. He doesn't matter. We don't know why they were vegans and are vegetarians, and we just don't know. We do know that he talked about that. He talked about the Sabbath laws. That's why one day is special and others aren't. He asks later, he's going to say something about drinking wine, but he doesn't spell it out. We know culturally that one of the issues with meat was because it would have been sacrificed in a temple, maybe to a false god. And so there were some people who they didn't want to eat that ever. But, and then there's people who talk about the Sabbath. And you understand, though, that the Sabbath for us is Sunday. It's the Lord's Day. We don't really very many of us rest on the Sabbath. But for them, there was a transition in there, and we don't know where they fell. Because, see, the Sabbath for the Jewish Christians would have been Saturday. But after the resurrection of Jesus on that first Easter morning, the first day of the week, Christians started meeting on Sundays. And so there were some who were like, well, I think we should meet on Saturdays, and others, well, I think we should meet on Sundays. And we, as a culture, we've watched some of that stuff be pulled away from us. So we have to figure out where we fit. There was a time when there were not sports, kids' sports, family activities planned on Sundays. Certain places were not open on Sundays. When we lived in Oklahoma just a few years ago, they still basically had the practice of there were no school activities on Wednesday nights. That's church night. And so we would have church meetings and church events and church activities because we knew that there would be no sporting events, no choir concerts. There would be nothing like that on a Wednesday night because as a culture, they still set Wednesday nights apart. We don't do that here. One of the lessons we have to learn is that we're all somewhere on this journey. And we're in different places, and so we have to make up our decisions based upon where we are at the time. One of the lessons I want us to pick up is don't automatically assume that you're strong in your faith. Maybe we think we are, but sometimes we're just growing through things. As an individual, as me as a person, I've had to grow through, and I'll just put it out there, on an issue of alcohol. I've said, I used to really enjoy it. And when I first became a Christian, I didn't drink at all for maybe 6 to 8 years, something like that. And then when actually it was even longer than that. And then I realized, guess what? I was young, I was an infant in my faith, but I believed that drinking was wrong. I believed that being a Christian, you could not drink. And that's not what Scripture says. It's nowhere does Jesus say, "Thou shalt not drink." We're going to go into the book of John, starting in Easter, and we're going to have some fun with his very first miracle. If you don't know what that was, he made 1,100 gallons of wine. All right, so, or bottles, not gallons. But anyway, so then I loosened up personally. But now, for other reasons, physical choice, a couple different things that Kat and I are doing in our lives, I've put it away again. But I don't care if, I don't care what other people do as long as they biblically, don't get drunk. That's what Scripture says. So in a way, my faith has strengthened in that area. But if you don't think you should ever drink or you don't think other people should drink, that's where you are in your faith. And I get that. As a church, we have to understand that we're filled with a room virtually with people who have different opinions on things. They're all in different places. What we have to understand is that the message, the eternal message of Jesus Christ never changes, but how we communicate it to the culture is always changing. All right. Verses 7 to 9. For none of us lives for ourselves alone, and none of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. The next lesson is that we have to die to ourselves. I think that's pretty straightforward. Jesus came, he died for us. That's the gospel. But I want to hear it. I want you to hear it this way. In his very popular, The Purpose-Driven Life, the very first words that Rick Warren writes, it's not about you. Let me say that again. It's not about you. The purpose of your life is far greater than your own personal fulfillment, your peace of mind, or even your happiness. It's far greater than your family, your career, or even your wildest dreams and ambitions. If you want to know why you were placed on this planet, you must begin with God. You were born by his purpose and for his purpose. We have to die to self. We have to quit making this life about me. Not me, like you, me. We make it about ourselves. We want what we want. We want our way. It's my way or the highway. It doesn't work. It's not what Jesus did. He's the one who sets the example. We're supposed to be following him. What if he just said, you know what? I don't need the cross. I don't want to do it. And we were left to live by the law. How many of us would make it? So it's not about us. We have to die to ourselves. And he says we have to do it every day. And it goes on, you then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me, every tongue will acknowledge God. So then each of us will give an account of ourselves to God. Just in case you missed that, every knee will bow. Every knee, not just the believers, every knee will bow. Every person is going to say, wow, you really exist. We're all going to be there. But we, as disciples of Jesus Christ, we declare Christ as our Lord and Savior. But we too have to give an account for our lives. Not just them. We too will be judged. We're going to have to give an account for every action that we do. As Dave said, talked about doing, and everything we don't do. We're gonna have to give an account for every word we've ever said. We're gonna have to give an account. And this one should scare most of us. And every thought. Just because you thought it and didn't do it doesn't mean he doesn't know about it. There's some of us who are like, well, I thought it, but I didn't really do it. Yeah, but he knew you thought it. And so, when we're on our knees before God, with Jesus right here saying, he's mine, how foolish will it sound when we say, yeah, but I got really mad at the church because they didn't do church my way? Are we really going to have that argument with Jesus who took the nails for us? That I didn't get my way. They didn't do it my way. And this is for both sides, or three sides, or four sides, however many sides. We're probably in a cube, I don't know what we're in. It doesn't matter. It's for all sides, all people. Let's play the video now, if we can. It'd be a good time for a little laughter. Because this is what we're like. You have something you have to say. No, I ain't got nothing. Do you know how many things happen in the church? And I'm not just talking about this church. It happens in this church. But they're saying, all right, have them come to my office. Let's talk about it. Oh, I don't know who they are. Well, then who are they? And you're laughing because you know it's true. We all, when we have something we want, we have friends who want it too, but we haven't actually talked to them about it. See, we build a coalition instead of actually just going and talking to somebody. And so here's what I want us to do. Can we attack problems? There are problems in our culture and in the church instead of attacking people. And let's look for solutions instead of trying to look for a slugfest. Why fight it out? Let's talk it out. Let's work on it together. Because if we don't, this is what happens. Back to verse 13. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. I am convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then in that person it is unclean. If your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you are no longer acting in love. Do not, by your eating, destroy someone for whom Christ died. Therefore, do not let what you know to be good be spoken of as evil. For the kingdom of God is not a matter of eating or drinking, but of righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit, because anyone who serves Christ in this way is pleasing to God and receives human approval. So our next lesson is that we have to quit destroying others. Paul, I want to really make this perfectly clear. Paul was a Jew. And he says he was a Jew of Jews. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was zealous for the law. He persecuted the early church. But I want you to understand what side he falls on. Because he says, I am convinced that the Gentile Christians are right. That nothing is unclean if God has said it's clean. But, so he picked a side, and he said, the new way, I go with that. That's my way. But we have to consider one another. Both sides has to look to one another. We have to change our attitude towards one another. We have to consider one another. We have to quit destroying each other and build each other up. That's how the whole body is built up. So quit tearing each other down. And he finishes this section with these words. Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. Do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. All food is clean, but it is wrong for a person to eat anything that causes someone else to stumble. It is better not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall. So whatever you believe about these things, keep to yourself and God. Blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves, but whoever has doubts is condemned if they eat, because their eating is not from faith, and everything that does not. What the world? Everything that does not come from faith is sin. Whew. Wow. We have to determine the best path. And we do this together. We have to make every effort to do things with love and unity and to build each other up. Do not destroy others. Do not destroy the church over disputable matters. Consider one another. I'd heard it last year when we were at Lincoln, and we heard it again yesterday. They call it the principle of the right person at the right time in the right way. I know I've brought it out before, but I probably ought to bring it out more often. This is a great principle that I want us to adopt here. You know, we're family. We're going to have issues. There are going to be conflicts. But let's talk about them. Go to the right person. Do not build a coalition. Do not gossip and slander. Go to the right person, the person who you need to talk to about the issue. Do it at the right time. Maybe not when your emotions are high. Maybe when you're not upset. By the way, this works in your family too, in your house, between couples. Make an appointment. Set a time. Let's go out to lunch together. I need to talk to you about this. So you talk to the right person at the right time and in the right way. Don't attack. Don't beat them into a corner. And don't make it personal. Just say, hey, here's the problem. How can we solve it? How can we get through this together? How can we come to the best plan? How can we make the best decision? So, I've been saying that we're one church, one mission for this 1 year. We're going to have to work together to be on mission. And the mission is the same for almost every church. And one of the statistics we heard yesterday is that 4 out of 5 churches have made their mission inside instead of outside. And it kind of correlates with the number of churches who are dying. We're gonna try to be mission focused. We want to say, Dave said I'm an evangelist. It's not that I don't love you, because I do. But you're all saved. Not all of you, most of you. Most of you are saved. We can take care of the rest of you in a minute. But I believe with all of my heart that Jesus is returning, because he said he is. And I believe it's going to happen sooner than later. And I want to take as many people with me as I go. I know you're coming, but I want you to take as many people with you. That's the mission. But we got to do it together. Got to do it together. Let's pray. Father God, Lord, this isn't an easy message to deliver. It's not an easy message to hear. And it's a difficult message to live out. We are called, we are commanded to love others. We are called and commanded to put others before ourselves. We are called and commanded to consider others' needs before our own. Dying to self is the hardest thing in the Christian walk. Lord, we want our own ways, our flesh, the world, everything tells us that we should want our own way. Even fast food tells us that we can have it our way. But Jesus stands in direct opposition to the culture. And so, Father, help us to embrace that, accept that, and live it out. Help us to care about others, especially their salvation. Father, you know what? We can have debates in the church, and most of the discussions and fights we have over, we can settle them later in heaven. And I'm good with that. But the ones we can't settle are with the people who don't know Jesus. We will never see them again. And I'm not good with that, Lord. I want to take as many people to heaven with me as I possibly can. And so help us to surrender to your will, to your way, to live according to your word. Help us to love you, love others, and go and make disciples. Let us be on mission. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.